Welcome to the X's and Argos scouting report for week 2. That's right, I've already renamed the segment after last week. Everyone told me that pregame walkthrough might be a better name for our pregame podcast, where we literally walk through what we expect to see in that week's game. So the scouting report this week, we are going to preview the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and joining me is Darrin Bauming from Bonfiresports.ca. Darrin, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Ben. Thanks for having me on.
And thanks so much for joining me. You got to tell me about last week's game a little bit as we start out here, because for us in Toronto, it was a little bit of a sister kisser. We love seeing any team beat up on the Hamilton Tiger Cats, but we also knew that we were waiting on deck. So, what were your impressions of last week's game?
Yeah, here in Winnipeg, obviously it was a huge celebration. To start, it was the banner raising of the Blue Bombers' 11th Grey Cup championship. That's been, nearly 2 years in wait, or a year and a half for sure. Obviously with no 2020 season. The first large-scale sporting event where we saw tens of thousands of fans here in Canada since the pandemic hit. That was a celebration in itself. Winnipeg allowed nearly 30,000 double vaccinated fans, plus people working the game, concessions, ushers, security, support staff, all of that, and then the players on the field. So it felt like, the way I've been putting it, Ben, it felt like I re-arrived on planet Earth, or we re-arrived on planet Earth. It started to feel a little semblance of normal again. The sights, the sounds, the smells of real live sports was back. That was the first takeaway from last Thursday night and the first game of the CFL season. As far as the game on the field, I don't know if you could ask for a better marquee matchup in week 1 of the 2021 season than a Grey Cup rematch, right? The Ticats came in with a ton of continuity, coaching staff, veterans on in all three phases and both sides of the ball, and Winnipeg as well. And as far as the West Division and the East Division, you can debate power rankings going into a season. You never know what you're going to get until you start playing the games. And I think, Toronto shocking Calgary was fun to watch, and McLeod Bethel Thompson throw for over 350. But in Winnipeg, it was watching Jeremiah Mazzoli, down a couple receivers starting the season on the 6-game injured list, but still working with Brandon Banks and making things happen and marching the field and putting up points on that opening drive. And then we really saw Winnipeg's defense flex its muscle. Maybe, objectively speaking, the best defensive front in the CFL today, showing what they did in the Grey Cup against Dane Evans and the Ticats, translating that to 2 years later in week 1 of the 2021 season. Winnipeg dominated at the line of scrimmage. Special teams didn't factor into the game too much at all. In the end, I think the offensive line and the defensive line, Brady Oliveira running against a beat-up Hamilton Tiger Cats defensive line. Dylan Wynn left in the third quarter. Of course, Ted Laurent did not dress for that game as well. I think the story was really in the line of scrimmage in both phases for both teams. But in the end, I have no doubt these two teams are going to be in the conversation when we're starting to look towards the playoffs and looking towards who we think will be in that Grey Cup game in Hamilton.
It was hard for me to tell how much of it was Winnipeg being great or Hamilton underachieving a little bit, because I thought Hamilton was going to win that game. I also thought Calgary was going to win the Toronto game. So, this is why I don't gamble, I guess. But that running game scares me a lot, because it looked very efficient. It looked very much like it did last year in the Grey Cup. And yet it's Brady Oliveira running the football. Is the offensive line that good where you and I could get out there and carry the ball for the Blue Bombers? Or what did you see from that running game?
That's really funny you say that, because that's kind of the running joke this week here in Winnipeg, is that anybody could, fall forward in a pile of dust and pick up yards behind this Blue Bombers offensive line. Brady Oliveira is a very good tailback. And, his 2019 season was cut short because of a pretty nasty broken ankle in his first professional game. He's a Winnipeg native, similar to Nick Dembski and Andrew Harris, born and raised here in the city, playing for their hometown team. They all went to Oak Park High School in the western part of Winnipeg as well. Just kind of a funny coincidence there. But he is a power back. He's great catching the ball out of the backfield. He's smart. He has the right mentality in approaching his game every single week. But I think, as the game went on, he got more comfortable. And I expect another big week from him because this isn't, a return and his first start and, releasing all that pent up energy following an injury shortened 2019 season and then an absent 2020 season. I think any running back would do well behind this Blue Bombers offensive line. They are that good. No doubt, as I kind of mentioned before, the Ticats defensive front, pretty banged up. Yeah, Javan Santos-Knox in the middle, Simone Lawrence at weak side. Great linebacking in Hamilton, but with no Ted Laurent to start the game, with no Dylan Wynn in those moments where Brady Oliveira really started to punish physically the Hamilton Tiger Cats defense, I think that no doubt played a factor into things. How much was sloppiness? How much was efficiency? We won't know until we start playing more games. But for a team like Toronto that upset the Calgary Stampeders, a lot of people are blaming the Stampeders' mistakes and that, like Bo Levi Mitchell put it, they gift wrapped that game for the Toronto Argos. I don't think that's any way disrespect to the Boatmen. I think that's more just being real about how that game went. I'm really looking forward to seeing McLeod Bethel Thompson test the pass defense of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, maybe a little bit more effectively with more weaponry at his disposal than maybe Jeremiah Mazzoli had last week.
Tell us a little bit about that defensive secondary. It's not a positional group we hear a lot about from Winnipeg, especially with Winston Rose no longer being there. We know about the defensive line. They've been headline material for a long time now. But who don't we know about in that defensive secondary that may be a problem for Toronto?
Yeah, that's a great question because it is a very young group and it's a very new group. And there's even going to be more changes. I don't want to give too much away, but it's looking like they're going to have to start another rookie, with the absence of Josh Johnson. He took a hit in the second quarter of that game against Hamilton. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go. Mike O'Shea, I always kind of joke, he doesn't hold his cards close to his chest. He keeps them in the lining of his vest, right? He will not reveal anything when it comes to a player's availability until they're actually on the field. That all said, DeAndre Alford, Dietrich Nichols, two rookies that took two different paths to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. No doubt Alford coming out of, almost obscurity in NCAA football, going to a school few people, if any, have ever heard about in Tecumseh. Forgive me. But to school him, I think is the name. And then Dietrich Nichols led the XFL in interceptions with 3 in their shortened 2020 season. So much more of a higher pedigree there, but both very good players. Mazzoli attacked that side of the field as was expected. Brandon Banks was playing there. But it is a young group. They had to shuffle some things around, but I think it really started to show the depth of talent the Blue Bombers have. Not just in that defensive front, but in that defensive secondary. They had Canadians and Toronto area natives in Nick and Noah Hallett. Both come in, the brothers that play for the Blue Bombers. Normally special teams contributors. Both of them took reps at safety once Josh Johnson went down. So of all those new guys, Josh Miller looking to check in this week. It could be a bit of a field day, for a quarterback head coach in Ryan Dinwiddie and a very prolific passer, McLeod Bethel Thompson is showing to be. Those big body guys that Toronto has in their receiving core, they really could that could be one key area, I think, to focus on Friday night.
Do you think this is going to be a similar game plan for Winnipeg where they go out and try and establish the run, and if it works, just keep pounding the ball? Because I know that Zach Collaros, you look at his stats, and they aren't overly impressive. They're still pretty good from last week, but they just didn't really need him that much. Is that sort of the plan this week, you think?
Absolutely. That's Winnipeg Blue Bomber football. That's their bread and butter. They always dictate what happens at the line of scrimmage, offensively, defensively as well, even on special teams. That's the way Kyle Walters, their general manager, has built this team. That's the way Mike O'Shea likes to play. He wants to be physical. He wants to be the intimidating team. He wants to play clean football as well. And how do you do that? Well, you orchestrate things right at the point of attack, and that's at the line of scrimmage. There's a reason they have, hoarded all of this talent on their offense and defensive lines. That said, it didn't matter if it was Drew Willie starting at quarterback, Matt Nichols, Chris Streveler, or Zach Collaros. They run the football. Paul Lapalisse, now the head coach of the Ottawa Redblacks, he really built that system here in Winnipeg. His protege and understudy over the last number of years, another former CFL quarterback in Buck Pierce, has really taken that and grown and built on it. The difference this Blue Bombers offense is compared to years past, Ben, is frankly, Zach Collaros is a legitimate passing threat. They definitely didn't have that with Chris Streveler. Of course, he was a different type of quarterback that could run roughshod over anybody. Definitely a more dangerous passer than Matt Nichols, healthy or otherwise. So I think it makes the run game harder to stop, because you can't just focus on Andrew Harris or Brady Oliveira or Johnny Augustine or Nick Dembski running between the tackles. You have to respect Zach Collaros going over the top to a Kenny Lawler, to a Nick Dembski. I call him the Canadian Swiss Army knife. He can really do it all. That's what makes this Winnipeg offense so scary. And I think as the games go on this season, I think Winnipeg is going to be getting a lot more respect for their offensive football. Maybe, in relation to the level of respect they're getting with Willie Jefferson, Adam Bighill, and some of those big names on defense.
So if Toronto somehow wins this game, what will have happened?
Well, I honestly feel, it's probably going to be mistakes. If that is the case, I think it'll be Winnipeg shooting themselves in the foot. That's taking penalties. That's playing undisciplined. That's missing assignments. That's not taking advantage of field position. Line of scrimmage play and field position is really how Mike O'Shea likes to coach his teams. And then ultimately, I think it's the way the Blue Bombers have been beaten over the last number of years. Richie Hall's defense has been known to be bend, don't break, points more important than yards against. They'll allow a 400-yard passer, but if the points are low, they're okay with that. If McLeod Bethel Thompson can put up 6s and 7s and not have to settle for 3s, that's more likely going to lead to a Toronto Argonauts win. They've shown that issue before, and especially with 3 defensive backs potentially being first-year CFLers, that's kind of the road to victory I see for the Argonauts.
So the last thing I'd like to get from you is if we could somehow settle on a prediction of some sort. So last week, Danny Austin and I had Calgary winning 24-20. Our score was really close, but we were on the wrong side of who was the victor. I see this as being sort of a 28-23 Winnipeg win. I think it's a tough ask for such a new team like Toronto to go on the road. I think they're thrilled about the win to start the season last week, as was I. I think it was an amazing way to start a head coaching career for Ryan Dinwiddie, and the team played great. I think back-to-back road weeks, they were stuck in Calgary too for almost an extra whole day, which didn't help. So I think it's probably a little bit too much to expect an Argos win this week. So I feel about 28-23. How do you see this game shaking out?
Yeah, I like that. Before I give my prediction, I loved seeing Ryan Dinwiddie get the Gatorade shower with his first career victory in his first career game. Us here in Winnipeg, I know all the Blue Bomber fans I know, friends and family of mine, they were hoping his first coaching victory and his first playing victory had similar fate. If he had won that 2007 Grey Cup with an injured Kevin Glenn and broken the Blue Bombers Grey Cup drought back in 2007, that would have been cool too. But, again, I'm not far off your prediction. I'm going to go a little bit lower scoring. I'm going to say, probably a 4 or 5 point game. I'll go maybe I'll go 26-21.
Sounds good. We'll lock it in.
Blue Bombers. I like that 5 point spread. I think that's pretty bang on.
Yeah, it sounds right for me. Well, Darrin, before you go, tell the folks where they can find you and where they can find all your stuff.
Yeah, Bonfiresports.ca. We got written content, video content, lots of good stuff on there. All the information you need as far as the rosters and the injuries and stats looking back to last week. YouTube.com/bonfiresports. Really excited. The legendary Chris Walby, widely regarded as the best offensive lineman to ever play in the CFL. Another Winnipeg native son joins me for pregame coverage on game day, and you'll be able to find that on YouTube as well.
For Darrin Bauming, I'm Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I hope you enjoyed the X's and Argos scouting report for week 2.